Every bad decision you have ever made felt like a good one at the time. That is not a coincidence. That is not weakness. That is not a failure of intelligence. That is your brain running a program it installed long before you had any say in the matter. Here is what I have spent a significant amount of time studying, and what the mainstream conversation around decision-making almost never says clearly enough. Your brain is not making decisions based on reality. It is making decisions based on an edited, filtered, heavily processed version of reality that was designed for a world that no longer exists. And the editing happens so fast, so deep below conscious awareness, that by the time a decision reaches the surface of your mind, it already feels like your own clear, rational conclusion. It was not. It was shaped, quietly, systematically, by 6 specific cognitive biases that are operating inside every significant choice you make. Most content on this topic names the biases and stops there. A definition, an example, a forgettable list. What I'm going to do is show you exactly how each one is working inside your real life right now. Not in a laboratory, not in a hypothetical, in the decisions you made this week that you still think were entirely your own. Pay close attention, because once you see these mechanisms in operation, the quality of every decision you make from this point forward will never be the same. The 6 biases. 1. Survivorship bias. You are learning from the wrong evidence. Every time you study a successful person, a winning business, or a strategy that worked, and use that as your decision-making template, you are only looking at the fraction of the picture that survived long enough to be visible. The failures are gone, quietly, without documentation, without anyone building a YouTube channel around them or writing a book about what they did wrong. This means that the advice you are consuming, the models you are following, and the strategies you are adopting are built on a dataset with the most important information systematically removed. You are navigating using a map that only shows the destinations people reached and leaves out every road that ended badly. The result is that your confidence in certain decisions is built on evidence that is structurally incomplete. You feel informed, you feel like you have done the research, but the research only included the part of reality that was still standing when you looked. Before you follow any model, ask what the failure rate of that model looked like and whether anyone is talking about it. Hold this, because bias 3 is going to show you something about how you evaluate your own past decisions that is going to be genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. 2. The sunk cost trap. Your brain defends investment instead of evaluating reality. The longer you have been in something, a relationship, a career, a project, a belief, the harder your brain works to justify staying in it. Not because staying is the right decision, but because leaving means admitting that the time, energy, and resources already invested were lost. The brain experiences that admission as a loss, and because it is wired to avoid loss more powerfully than it pursues gain, it will manufacture reasons to continue long after the rational case for continuing has collapsed. This is why people stay in jobs they stopped growing in 3 years ago, why they hold investments that have been declining for months, why they continue relationships that stopped working long before either person admitted it out loud. The investment already made is gone, regardless of what you decide next. It does not change based on whether you stay or leave, but the brain treats it as a reason, and that distortion is quietly destroying decisions that should be straightforward. The only question worth asking is this: knowing everything you know right now, would you choose to begin this again today? If the answer is no, the sunk cost is the wrong reason to continue. 3. Hindsight bias. Your brain rewrites history to make you feel wiser than you were. After an event occurs, especially a bad one, The brain quietly revises the memory of what you knew beforehand. What felt uncertain at the time begins to feel like it should have been obvious. The outcome that surprised you starts to feel like something you almost predicted. This is not a benign quirk. It is a decision-destroying mechanism. Because if your brain is continuously convincing you that past outcomes were more predictable than they actually were, it is also inflating your confidence in your ability to predict future outcomes. You are not learning the real lessons from your past decisions. You are learning a revised, retrospectively coherent version that makes you feel more certain than the evidence justifies. The most dangerous decisions in your life will not feel dangerous. They will feel obvious, clear, supported by a track record your brain has been quietly editing in your favor. Before you trust a strong feeling of certainty about any significant decision, ask yourself whether that certainty existed before the relevant events or whether your brain built it after the fact. Do not skip Bias 5. It is the one operating most powerfully inside every decision you make with other people in the room, and it is the one nobody ever identifies until the damage is already done. 4. The availability heuristic. Your brain confuses memorable with probable. Your brain does not calculate probability by examining statistical evidence. It calculates probability by asking how easily a relevant example comes to mind. If you can recall it quickly, your brain treats it as common. If it is difficult to recall, your brain treats it as rare. And that calculation has nothing to do with how frequently something actually occurs. This is why people dramatically overestimate risks that generate vivid, emotionally charged memories, and dramatically underestimate risks that are statistically significant but visually undramatic. The events that generated the strongest emotional imprint are treated as the most representative data points, regardless of whether they reflect actual frequency. Every decision you make about risk, probability, and likelihood is being quietly shaped by which examples your brain can most easily retrieve, and the most easily retrievable examples are almost never the most statistically representative ones. 5. Conformity bias. Your brain changes what you actually see to match what the group believes. This goes deeper than social pressure. It goes deeper than wanting to belong. Research has confirmed that when a person is surrounded by a group that agrees on something incorrect, a significant percentage will not just publicly agree with the group to avoid conflict. They will genuinely begin to see and experience what the group is seeing, even when it contradicts the evidence directly in front of them. The brain does not just conform behaviorally, it conforms perceptually. It edits what you register as real to reduce the gap between your experience and the group's consensus. This means that the most significant distortion of your decision-making is not happening in moments of obvious peer pressure. It is happening in every environment where a dominant consensus exists: your workplace, your social circle, your professional network, quietly reshaping what you were able to see as possible, true, or worth considering. The person who learns to notice when their perception is being shaped by the room rather than by reality gains access to a quality of judgment that most people will never develop. 6. Projection bias. Your brain assumes future you will feel exactly what present you feels now. When you make a decision in a specific emotional state, hungry, excited, frustrated, afraid, your brain projects that state forward onto the future version of yourself who will live with the consequences of that decision. It assumes future you will want what present you wants, that future you will feel what present you feels, that the emotional context of this moment will remain constant across the entire future the decision is being made for. It almost never does. This is why decisions made at emotional peaks feel obvious in the moment and baffling in hindsight. Why commitments made during excitement feel burdensome after the excitement passes. Why risks taken during confidence feel reckless the moment the confidence drops. You are not making a decision for your future self. You are making a decision for a temporary emotional state that no longer exists, and your future self is living with the consequences. Before any significant decision, ask which part of this choice belongs to the feeling you are currently in, and whether the version of you that will live with this outcome is likely to be in the same feeling when it arrives. You just identified 6 ways your brain has been quietly editing reality before your decisions are even made. But here is what I need you to understand before you leave. Awareness alone does not fix this. Knowing the name of a cognitive bias does not neutralize it. The brain does not stop running these programs simply because you have read a description of them. They are faster than conscious thought, older than language, and they do not respond to intellectual understanding the way a habit responds to willpower. What they respond to is structural change, environmental design, specific decision-making practices that interrupt these patterns at the moment they are operating, rather than after the damage has already been processed. The next video on the rational soul goes directly into that, the specific practices that build the kind of decision-making architecture that makes you genuinely harder to manipulate by other people and by your own brain. Most channels give you the list and leave you with it. The rational soul builds what comes after the list. Subscribe to the rational soul. Turn on every notification. Do not miss the next one. The decisions you make in the next 12 months will compound into the life you are living in 5 years. The brain running those decisions either works for you or against you. That is the only question that matters.